Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Apereo micro conference. My name is Patrick Masson, and I'm the Executive Director for the Apereo Foundation. And today, we're going to be talking, I guess, business in open source, despite Stephen Wally's comment about there is no open source business model. Perhaps we'll challenge that today with folks who are directly involved with companies working with and supporting and developing open source software. So just real quickly, let's make sure the slides are working. Yes. Just real quickly, we're now in our third year of micro conferences. The growth has been great. A little bit about Apereo and our micro conferences. Apereo's been around for about 25 years. We have 14 projects that are in production around the world with over 8,000 collaborators that include faculty and researchers and instructional designers and 95 committing institutions with almost 800 contributors that are actually producing code. And then, as I was saying, the micro conferences themselves have grown tremendously in this 3 years with almost 1,400 registrations from around the world. So we're really excited with the growth of this, and it's because of I think the folks that we're having on and the topics that we're discussing. These are the hot issues in not just open source, but also higher education and education technology as well. So today is no different, and I'm excited to have the topics and the folks that we're having today. I would be remiss in not first thanking our sponsors, which are Big Blue Button and Blindside Networks, which is providing the platform that we can deliver this on, and then JMA Consulting that does our Civi CRM support. That was the registration tool that allowed all of us to sign up and get here at the same time. And of course, the Apereo community, all of you folks that come every month with your ideas, your insights, your inspirations. I really appreciate the engagement that we've been able to have with the broader Apereo and higher ed tech communities. So thank you for that. So to the what everyone came for, we are very fortunate to have, I don't know how this worked out, but CEOs from around the world, literally around the world, who are all deeply engaged in some way with open source software, education technology, either as developers of projects or providing support in a variety of ways. And it was just too good of an opportunity to pass up, not to get their perspectives, their business insights on how working with open source software and the communities create business, how they leverage those relationships in order to grow their business, and at the same time support open source and higher ed. I think that's a critical piece of this, is finding authentic engagement in companies that aren't marketing open source. They're actively engaging to, yes, of course, support their companies and grow their companies, but just as importantly, grow the ecosystem as well. And so I'm excited to have this group. What we'll do today is, because we have a big group, I'm going to introduce folks and then ask them a question, and then we'll go through, so that way you can remember better who it is that's speaking and responding to the question, and we'll go through. So I'm going to introduce folks individually. A little more housekeeping. You have questions, feel free to type them into the public chat, and we'll take a note of those. And at the end of all the questions, or after each of the CEOs have responded to the questions, we'll open it up for your questions to them. So hopefully that made sense. And if not, we'll just go through it and everyone will just go along. All right, so starting off is Kirsten Heiss, who is the CEO of Open Campus. And Kirsten is the founder and managing director of Open Campus. It's a European initiative that provides open ecosystems for higher education and management. Kirsten was originally trained as a medical doctor and transitioned into technology and consulting to expand the impact of that work. He first worked as an IT consultant at Gartner and later with the United Nations Development Program, implementing educational technology solutions for emerging countries. These experiences led him to establish Open Campus as a collaborative, open initiative for institutions to build their own digital infrastructure And Open Campus is an Apereo Platinum commercial member. So thank you for that to Kirsten and Open Campus. All right, Kirsten, you're on the spot first. And I know you just got off a train, so hopefully you're ready to go. But Open Campus has built an open ecosystem for higher education management that enables institutions to create and customize their own digital infrastructure. So business processes, operational capacity, unique to their institution. How does this open collaborative approach accelerate institutional innovation compared to proprietary systems? And what challenges and opportunities have you encountered in sustaining broad participation and alignment across all those diverse institutions, perhaps doing different things? So welcome, and you're up first.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. Yeah, so the idea initially, right, when we started was that we wanted to add the flexibility that the institutions could decide what functionality they want to have, because they came to us with exactly that complaint. They said there's certain functionality that we can buy on the market, but anything that is specific to our needs that doesn't match a business case that is financially viable for a company to build, they won't build that. So the key problem was they wanted software, but nobody would build it because it's not financially viable. So we wanted to create a kit, an SDK basically, that would allow anybody to design their software, and not be dependent on a vendor to decide on, yeah, whether that's worth it or not. So that was the key reason why we built this no code platform for higher ed. And they were quite happy once they got that. They digged into it and they were creating workflow solution functionality for very specific items, processes in universities that we even had never heard about. But the fact that they then were able to build it and share that showed us how many people, how many institutions actually needed that. So we were surprised about details in graduation processes or research management. Equivalency checks was one of the latest where we thought, oh my God, never knew that this was actually part of that. So giving them the ability to build something that they could do, not based on the grace of a company deciding whether that's worth it or not. So part of the idea of academic freedom here is also academic freedom in building the technology that accompanies my teaching. Yeah, that was the idea. And we've all heard about this thing about vendor lock-in. Everybody really is concerned about the effect of vendor lock-ins. It's financial is one aspect, but the fact that when they create knowledge, when they create IP that other people could use, that also should not be owned by a vendor. They want to create IP and share that. There's a contribution to the higher ed family, and that's a very important aspect. That what you create within the technology should also be not owned by the party, by the provider that's creating your frameworks. The challenges, of course, are building solutions is not a simple thing, right? If you build code or you create a digital solution to a process, there's a lot of knowledge that you have to have. What's a good process? How do you work with the user interfaces? What is efficient? How is it scalable? So that took us quite a couple of years to prove the environment against accidental mistakes when it came to performance, security, other aspects, right? So we enabled people that were not coders to build solutions. So we had to basically create a fence around that so they couldn't make many mistakes. That was actually the biggest challenge, to be honest, right? Enabling a non-coder to code, and making that work in the end, that's most of the effort that we've put into it. But once we got there and we empowered people to do that, they were building the most wonderful solutions, right? Because they exactly knew what they needed. And you don't have this effort of translating that, right? So you have the product owner that knows what he wants, and then you translate that for the coder, and he builds something, and that's then not what you need, and that cycle goes multiple times. So in this environment, they now can build what they need, and they can adapt it to the changing environment. So I think that are the key things. But yeah, making it possible and making it simple and secure were the biggest challenges, I think.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kristen. I can imagine. I recall ASU, gosh, this was probably 10 years ago, implemented a new ERP system. And the challenge wasn't just the implementation of the technology, it was retraining their staff to operate under the parameters, the guidelines of the ERP system. The ERP system came with a predefined set of activities to enroll a student or to check if you know, they were eligible for a class, if they had all the prerequisites or whatever it might be. And that was a whole implementation process that they hadn't considered. So it sounds like this is a way to allow them to do that, creating their own. But then again, to your point, how do you ensure the guardrails are there so they don't end up doing something that compromises the entire system? So thank you for that. Kate, you're up next. And thank you also for waking up early on the West Coast for us. I appreciate that. So just a quick introduction here. Kate Valente is the CEO of Unicon, where she sets the company's vision, leads the executive team, and oversees the operational strategy. She brings deep experience in ed tech. I think I know you've been with Unicon for quite a while, so and served as co-CEO even before this. So, but the experience at Unicon and EdTech is vast, and particularly in enterprise integrations and solution delivery. Before CEO, she served as Unicon's Chief Operating Officer and Senior Director of Integrations and Analytics. Earlier in her career, she worked as a management consultant for Capgemini, Ernst & Young, focusing on enterprise application integration. Kate is passionate about improving educational experiences while fostering a human-centered workplace culture. Please ask her about her talent as a service. If it doesn't come up, I hope it does. But Kate, jumping into the question, Unicon focuses on technology enablement and ed tech, sometimes in a team approach and sometimes through a talent as a service model. From your perspective, how does open source interoperability and integration fuel innovation across campus systems? And what role does Unicon play in helping institutions sustain these open ecosystems, both the technology and again, the talent, while adding business value?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Patrick, for inviting me to join this conversation. I think you were trying to guess my age for a minute there, maybe years of service in ed tech, but yeah, been in this space for a really long time, and innovation is such a big topic. So I'm really pleased to be here and get to contribute some thoughts. If I can be a little philosophical for a moment, our experience shows that open source doesn't just shape innovation in higher ed, but it sort of changes the dynamic. It changes who has the authority to innovate. So when we see schools choosing open source as a strategy for innovation within their IT governance approach, it's not just a strategy that, like you said, gets beholden to a procurement cycle and then a product is chosen and then you have to figure out how to fit your work into the product. It's a strategy that's really owned by the institution. And the somewhat uncomfortable truth of that is that that can be a double-edged sword. Because if we believe that open source changes who has the authority to innovate, we're also saying open source changes who has the accountability to innovate. And for me, that's really the crux of open source software standards. If you're willing to adopt, you have to be willing to sustain. And I see that as the role of commercial supporters as well, because open source as a strategy for innovation works if an institution can translate their needs and their directions into an operational reality, but it's really a shared operational reality. So that's where Unicon plays. Our approach is capacity as stewardship. That could be team capacity or individual capacity, but we embed talent and teams that help not only to operationalize open source within an institution, but also sustain it. So for instance, there are lots of institutions out there who want to adopt, but maybe they don't have sustained engineering bandwidth, or maybe they want to adopt, but they're afraid to be on their own if they have issues in production. So our services help them in implementation, configuration, and engineering, project leadership, support, all of the above. But critically as important, we help to sustain the open source projects that we support. So we contribute code upstream, we participate in working groups, we make sure that features that are being added, reinforce rather than fragment the ecosystem. And at the end of the day, the healthier the open source community, the better the business. So these two things really reinforce each other. And I think that's the key learning here is you have a lot of control when you adopt open source, but you also have a responsibility. And as a commercial supporter, we believe our role is not only to help institutions operationalize those systems, but also to shape and to sustain them.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's often an excitement, a real interest in the core technology, whatever that might be, and an institution might have capacity and expertise in that specific thing, but the broader principles and practices and standards and technologies that might be needed to sustain a project versus just implement that. Do you help those organizations identify those gaps? Like, oh, I'm a great Drupal admin and administrator, or Python developer, but oh wait, now I have to build community. I mean, what about that? How do you assess the gaps that these institutions might have?
So I think that it really depends on what part of the tech stack the technology sits in. We do a lot of work in what I'd call more infrastructure and the critical identity access management type of work. Whereas, Kirsten's example is kind of workflow across the organization. There's going to be very different skill sets that teams are going to need to be able to sustain. So I think it really depends on where in the tech stack are you adopting these projects, and how much extensibility are you actually trying to build in versus just implementation and configuration. So it really depends on the type of technology. But I think that we have seen over the years many institutions who did not understand that by adopting, they were joining a community. It was like, we've adopted this, and we expect what we expect from commercial software. We expect a roadmap. We expect somebody to be doing the next best thing. And that just really doesn't work. You have a whole community of expectation, but nobody driving, nobody giving an opinion. That's really the problem. And so we're always emphasizing that this is a partnership with a community when you're adopting open source, whether it's software or standards or ecosystems. We're saying that now you're part of something that you have to contribute back to, whether you're contributing actual code or whether you're just contributing an opinion on a roadmap. I mean, I'm shocked at how many times we work with schools and they're like, oh, just build the next thing. Like, no. The point is that you get to say what the next thing is. You get to have an opinion on that.
All the openness without the openness. Yes. Well, thank you. Let's see here. Who's next on that? Inga. Let's see. Get my notes. Inga, Dr. Voort is an Apereo board member, as well as CEO and owner of D-Learning in the Netherlands. Trained as a teacher, she later worked as a consultant for the government and businesses before focusing on online learning. In 2010, she founded D-Learning to develop digital learning materials and support organizations in using tools such as Xerte, which is the project she works with quite a bit effectively. Since 2009, she has contributed to the Xerte project, including work on internationalization, learning analytics, and adaptive learning. Her guiding principles is, quote, open source unless there's no other option, emphasizing sharing and reuse of educational resources across the community. So Inga, your work with D-Learning and contributions to open source tools like Xerte emphasize sharing, reuse, and adaptive learning. How do you see open source and instructional tools shaping pedagogical innovation at scale in higher education? And what have you learned about sustaining a community-driven learning ecosystem in the long term?
Yeah, thank you for letting me be here on this panel. It's very interesting, and I totally agree with you, Kate, on what organizations expect when they work with open source. And that's always not a discussion, but a sort of education, and educate them in how it works for an open source community. When I look at Xerti, and for people that don't know what Xerti is, I will add a link in the chat for some examples. Xerti is an open source authoring tool where you can create online accessible, interactive, media-rich modules. And it's totally open source. And what we try to do is when organizations start using, for example, Xerti, we have more open source tools, but for example, Xerti, to also take them with us in the whole path of sharing with others, that you can download the modules again from another organization, rewrite things, give it back to the community. We started in the Netherlands, say 15, 18 years ago, we started with Xerti. And we noticed that then it was some small tool on someone's computer in an organization. And then we, with the organization, with the Xerti organization, we went to a web-based version, and that helped a bit. But we now noticed in the Netherlands and in the UK that it is a very important part of the eco-learning system of the organization. And then all of a sudden, things are different. It's not a tool that some teacher uses alone, but it has to work, and they are depending on it. So we did a couple of things. One is we make sure that organizations can get support and can get help from an organization like D-Learning. There are more organizations, but and that makes them feel more comfortable about using an open source that important in their organization. Another thing is that we try with all our open source tools to make it platform independent. So you can use it in Sakai, you can use it in Moodle, you can use it in Canvas. Also on that front, we look at the openness, and that you can use it wherever you want. One thing that I have to add to that, when we notice now that it's more and more important for organizations to use an open source tool like Xerti, they are also getting a bit scared. And there are now a lot of tools to go through the code and say, oh, there are a lot of conflicts and that's wrong, and it's a lot of problems with the software. And that's okay, because it makes our software better and better. But if you look at commercial, they think open source, it's you have access to everything, it's cheaper. And then they say, okay, but it should be safe, and all those things, you have to solve that. But who's going to solve that? Because you have an open source community. So you try to talk to the organizations to let them understand how it works. You solve most of the things. But I also ask them, okay, but if you use a commercial tool, do you know what's happening there? You pay, but you don't know what's happening behind what you get. So that's a bit what we found out. And one the question was also about the our community. We notice as the tool is getting bigger and more important for organizations, that organizations also are willing to be part of the community. And they formed now their own, and we are proud of that, in the Netherlands, their own key users organization that is discussing the tools without us involved. Yeah, we are involved, but our initiate it. And that's cool, I think.
Great.
Okay.
I imagine that dealing with multiple types of users, it's not just technical folks, it's instructional designers and faculty and course design or academic administrators and so on, adds a dimension to the project and the community that's different from others. So challenging that, or working with all those different folks who are coming from different perspectives, must be a challenge. But thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to Salva. Salva is actually a Apereo board alum, so thank you for your service, and the CEO of, and mi español es muy mal, so I'm not going to try to say the name in Spanish, we'll just call it EDF. So he's CEO of EDF, an e-learning company based in Spain, and works with universities and corporations across 3 continents, so it's not just in Spain. He has focused on technology-enhanced learning since 1995, and founded Macro Room Multimedia Solutions, winning the Mobius Award in edutainment. In 2000, he helped develop one of the first Spanish learning management systems for the Valesian government, later expanding the project to serve 25 institutions and around 40,000 users. He also contributed to building the Valesian International University's online platform using all open source technologies, particularly Sakai, an Apereo project, and EDF is a Apereo commercial member. So Salva, thanks for being here today. And looking at EDF, its history includes both large scale and niche implementations, big schools, small schools, departments, and so on, across universities. How has working with open source platforms influenced how institutions approach digital transformation in teaching and learning? And what are the key ingredients for sustaining that innovation and community support over time?
Oh, thanks, Patrick, to invite me to the session. It looks from my bio that I'm a learning dinosaur here. But it's true that the first LMS in Spain was later an open source LMS here in Spain, contributed with different public institutions in Spain. Today is the project is stopped because obviously we have many different solutions on the market. But yeah, EDF is a company with 20 years track record, and we always say that in a way that in our vision it's always remain the open source formula as a vision of the company, and we try to say always that to the clients that the open source is not a cheap solution. Is the way to maintain the control of the teaching and learning for his institutions in the universities. So we are always trying to keep on mind that customers, we don't need to say customers, or they don't need to say vendors. Is the way that Kay say that we are partners in a project that helps for the teaching and learning project in each institution. So that's what we need always to put on the focus. So regarding about the ingredients, yeah, and under this open source formula, for example, at this moment we are developing in the last 2 years on Chile a complete and strange gradebook for some universities on the Chilean country, because they have different scale for the gradebooks. So the project started with a company, with a university, sorry, but today there are 5 universities using that software, and it's contributed between them, and we are trying always to convince them that is the real practice to share the new features and add-ons and maintain the software between all of them. So at this moment, for example, I'm proud that this formula is working on Chile with under this umbrella, and step by step, the group on the Chilean universities is starting to contribute more and speak more between them to make a sustainable project, no? in the future. So in a way, one of the ingredients always is keep focus on maintain and promote the good open source practice, no? Also, I think it's an interesting formula when we have the STU group here in Spain, that is the Sakai Spanish group, that started in 2008 as a group of universities using Sakai, and yeah, they do during these days amazing things, because it's not only a question to share code to the master of to the Sakai master. The group is always meeting every week, discussing about teaching and learning, how is the appropriate roadmap for the next version, and many other things, no? So it's not only a place where we are sharing code, no? So I think the relevant thing about the Spanish Sakai group is that they started as a user group, and today they are a formal community with rules and methodology of work. And for example, we have a face-to-face annual meeting in 2 weeks, but every week we have a meeting, and we are always sharing information about the Sakai, in that case, cases. So I think probably other one ingredient is that one, no? The point to promote from groups of work to a formal communities to make a sustainable software for the future, no?
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I had a delay. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, there's and of course, I think the third ingredient to be quick is that that we are always trying to work at EDF as a axis between the different initiatives. So as Apereo do every day, yeah. So I think in a way is the same, no? So summarizing, I think the key ingredients are to promote the good open source practice. In that case, act as an axis between people to join them, and help to establish sustainable community groups for the software.
Yeah, and I think that aligns with what I was going to say. It's interesting that the Spanish Sakai group started off as just a community of collaboration and users on institutions, but seems to have elevated or risen to a point where it's seen even by the Spanish government when it's doing work on education and grants and things like that as an authoritative source on not just Sakai but teaching and learning online, and that EDF has helped to elevate that community as a group of professionals, that it's not just the technology and an open source project now. It's a core community for expertise in online learning. So I think that's a sort of a shift of what is normally thought of as a user community supporting the project, and now companies and government are looking to the user community as experts. So it's an interesting change, and I think an important one. So congratulations on that. So Marcel, you are up next. Marcel Oostdijk is a Dutch technologist, entrepreneur, and also a Apereo board member with over 15 years of experience in higher education and open source development. As the founder and CTO of Outfox, he leads the design and deployment of Drupal-based platforms that support collaboration and research across European universities. His work focuses on sustainable digital public infrastructure built around privacy, transparency, and institutional ownership. These principles closely align with Apereo's own mission to advance open source technologies in education. Marcel is passionate about helping universities adopt open source alternatives and building resilient digital ecosystems for the academic community. So Marcel, Outfox emphasizes sustainable, human-centered digital infrastructure using open source solutions like Drupal. How does embracing open digital infrastructure contribute to long-term innovation and ownership for institutions? And what strategies have you found effective in ensuring open source investments endure beyond the initial adoption, when I'm sure everyone's excited to use the new toys and do the new things?
Indeed. So thank you, Patrick and Jen, for having me being on the panel. A lot of things have already been said, of course, and I think this question that has the words long-term and innovation in it is a really interesting question in the time that we live in with all the new AI models coming up, and the profession of a software developer that is really changing rapidly in the last year. I think in the last year, the most innovation has been in throughout my career. So I think for Outfox and our customers choosing open source, I think a large component of that is not only about technology. I mean, as you know, the CIOs of an higher education institution like the open source, but some stakeholder groups that our customers don't care that it's open source too much. But I think it's about autonomy and not only about technology. So just to sketch a bit more, like we are working in consortia of higher education institutions throughout Europe, having 8 to 10 universities partner up via a digital collaboration platform that's running on Drupal, and we are providing all services around maintaining, managing, and making that platform and that collaboration or consortium successful. And if we disappear as a company or go bankrupt, that infrastructure for that consortium is still there. It's owned by our customers. It's running on the infrastructure of our customers. So I think that's that autonomy that they have. That's a large topic of discussion in Europe, of course. I think that's a really important thing. And then the question on what makes it endure. I think there are the foundations and governments that are there, of which Apereo is a good example, of course. I think that really helps, because open source doesn't sustain itself. Someone needs to maintain it, fund it, govern it. And that's also why I like to be on the Apereo board to help providing the structure to make sure that open source projects can stay alive, basically. I think the sustainable funding for open source projects, even in thriving communities like the Drupal community, is always a difficult topic. But I think the opportunity for higher education is there, because that collaborative spirit that was also mentioned by previous panelists, I think that's already present in higher education, and that could really work in and really relates well to the culture of open source.
Great. So thank you all for that. We've got about 20 minutes to go, and I wanted to open it up for questions. If anyone has questions, feel free to post it in the chat. And I don't know if we have any right now, but Jen, maybe you can just take note of them, because I'll sort of prime the pump here. I guess the theme that I was hit with across all of your answers here was that around investment beyond the initial implementation. So I'll put my, you can make fun of me as the former CIO, CTO. When I was in those roles, we went to state contract. That was the best possible thing because it reduced the cost for the entire system and across the consortia. We looked for service level agreements that ensured a certain amount of support over these amount of years. The investment was in procurement. And then once we had it in place, there was contractual obligations. This is a different model in the sense of the types of investments seem different. Investing in community, investing in long-term sustainability, investing in the roadmap. And then also the investors seem different. You have faculty that are investing, instructional designers, technical folks, not just the institution through the procurement office. Does anyone want to touch on how you convey that value proposition that's so different, so outside the norms of traditional implementation approaches? How do you pitch this as not only explaining it as an alternative model, but also the benefits and, quite honestly, drawbacks from this approach? Anyone want to tackle that one? Oh, we have raised hand, Inga. That's so formal. So Inga, you raised your hand first.
Yeah, yay. What I wanted to add to that is that we noticed that we get contributions from all over the place, from teachers, from developers, from organizations together that want to develop things and ask us. But lately, the government in the Netherlands and the government in Belgium are also embracing open source software, and also the 30 project in this case, and that really helps. Because all of a sudden organizations thinks, okay, if the government is putting money in developments, then it is for them more sustainable, and they don't ask the question, do I want to invest in something in an open source tool? So the involvement of the government in this case is really helping for us.
Did someone else virtually or in IRL in real life raise their hand as well? I don't know.
Should I raise my hand? No.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, I think there's a lot of aspects about open source, what the advantages are, but people are looking for different things, right? So when we talk to CIOs or people in the procurement, they look at different aspects of it. So security is one aspect, for example. So as Inga said, open source is a lot more secure than closed source products. And then people only would care about that. What's the securest solution that I could get? Then we say, yeah, because of that and that reason, open source will be the most secure technology that we could use for that use case. Or the vendor lock-in fear, right? So if I invest into that, could a vendor take it all and increase the prices and all of that? So different aspects matter to different people. And I think our role as a company here is being a moderator, explaining the different advantages and knowing what the client needs, what the client is looking for, and then extracting that information and serving it in a digestible format. We did have CIOs that said, oh no, we don't want open source software because we can't run it, we can't maintain it, and we think it's insecure. There was actually education needed to make them understand what they get with open source, and that their assumption wasn't quite true. So we need to educate people, we need to moderate the process, and basically translate information for the ones buying or using it.
Anyone else before I jump on to Randy's question? Okay, not seeing any virtual or real hands. I'll move on to Randy's. Let's see here. Values haven't been mentioned yet as a reason why educators would embrace working with open source companies and projects. To what extent is this important, and are there examples? Anyone want to tackle that one?
So I'd love to give a perspective on this, but from the business perspective. So hopefully one of my fellow panelists will talk about it from the educator perspective. But I think values is an equally important aspect of the companies that support open source. When you look at the companies that are represented here, I don't know what everybody's stated core values are, but at Unicon, we have core values of integrity and mastery and uplift. And those sort of behaviors that we talk about being important internally lend themselves to contributing in communities, because they have that sense of we're doing these things together, curiosity, we're building together. So I think values is a really important part of the choice, not only on the education side, but on the side of, you know, companies that are willing to be commercial partners, that they need to also believe in those tenets that make a thriving community. And so it's good to look at it from both perspectives. But hopefully one of my fellow panelists can say from the educator perspective.
Anyone want to jump in there? I mean, if anyone's I agree completely, Kate. I mean, looking at how a partner that you're going to engage with on an open source project, their authenticity, their approach, their values is critical when deciding who you're going to work with on an open source project. Are they going to be open and transparent in their development? Are they going to contribute back what they've developed upstream, even if it's not directly related to the project we're working on? Are they working with the community beyond the engagement with your institution? I mean, those are the types of things that I think companies that are, again, authentically engaged with them, but those are the values they express. You can see those things. And I know that's what we used to work, again, when in my former life, we would look at is show to us that you're an active member engaging authentically in these communities. Now, was there anyone who wanted to touch on the educational values? All right, I won't force the issue. Was there another question? Maybe we need an onboarding checklist for open source consumers, i.e., this is what a community is, or this is what a value is, and the expectations. I think maybe that was just a comment. If I could use the privilege of hogging the mic here and being the MC, looking out in the future, there's I remember I went to EDUCAUSE back in 2010, 2012, and every booth had open source. So if you went last year, every booth had AI. I felt bad because one of the vendors at EDUCAUSE sells classroom furniture, which doesn't really have an AI component, so their signage didn't have AI. I said, what are you doing? You're not going to get any traffic if you don't have AI chairs or something. I don't know. It knows where you're going to sit before you sit. I don't. But we seem to be in this cycle where open source isn't talked about, yet everyone depends on open source. It keeps the internet going. Most of the reports are out that 95% of ed tech software uses open source components. Where do you think the future of open source is? Is it just like plumbing? Is it more like facilities on campuses now, where it's plumbing and lighting and parking? Or are there opportunities for innovation? What's the role of open source, do you think, in the next 5 years for anyone who wants to take that? And Inga, not using the button this time, but raising the hand?
Sorry that I did that before.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a sort of a story around your question, so it's not quite what you asked, but with Dirty, we noticed that if we don't use AI, we are not there anymore in 1 year or later. So we asked our community, and the community asked us to develop it together. So we thought of a business model. It's a dirty word, but a business model, and that was that the organizations are putting money together, and then we can add AI to Dirty. But that didn't work because organizations and schools don't work like that. So they have to say, okay, I give money to a project, but we don't know exactly what it will be. So they don't do that, but they still wanted it. So what we now did was we turned it around, and we don't know if it's going to work. We hope so, because we just released in December, is that we build it and we invested it, and then we ask them if they want to have our support and help and hosting for it. We get money back, and so we hope we get it sustainable. So that's not quite an answer on your question, but it was something that happened to us, and in the end, everybody is happy. We hope.
And that sounds like a traditional product development pipeline where you're looking at the environment, you're seeing a increasing interest in a certain thing, you're developing that. But the key there is that you're still developing it in the open through open source. And Kirsten, you want to add something?
Yeah, so I mean, 10 years ago, it was part of the marketing hype, right? Everybody wanted to be open source. It was a marketing element. Now it's foundation, as you said, it's the foundation, and it's accepted. It's not something to sell the software now. It's accepted standard. I just came. That's the reason I just got off the train. I came from the ZKI conference, which is the conference of all the IT departments of the German universities. And they showed what the projects are they're working on, centralizing of services and everything. And they only consider open source software for that. So if you go on the expert level, I think the vast majority of people is very aware that the way forward will be open source technology. It's not in the marketing anymore, but on the level of the experts that actually utilize technology, they're very aware of that, and it's a standard, especially here in Europe. It's really the only possible choice if it's about public infrastructure, public universities. So it's maybe just that we perceive it as not being the key thing, but if you look at what's happening under the hood, it's all about open source.
Any other thoughts from the other panelists? Want to jump in? All right. Not seeing another question on the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. But a lot of the folks that are here, I think, have open source projects that they're working on, either in institutions, and they're thinking about, hey, can I create a business around this? What advice, guidance, warnings might you give a project maintainer or community that's interested in taking their project and creating a business around it, or reaching out to a company as possibly a project that the company might want to take on as a part of their portfolio? For those starting up and sort of entrepreneurial or business minded, what advice might you give folks? You've all done it. You're all doing it. Any advice out there for the bright-eyed and, as of yet, hasn't suffered a punch to the nose, interested? Marcel?
Yeah, so I think the services part of software becomes more and more important. I think due to AI, the value of code itself might go towards zero eventually. And the models all have incorporated the code that's there, especially the open source code. So I think the world of services around code and delivering a value to customers are becoming increasingly important. So for newcomers, I would say that that's also an easy and a better line to start business there.
Other thoughts?
I'll
Advice?
add to that. Yep, I'll add to that. There's power in numbers, and I think in our experience, the platforms that we've had a hard time to support have been those that have dwindled in numbers. And so, as the worst thing when you sell something is to sell one, right? Because then you have to support one. So if you have a small but forming community that you can rely on and that you can build upon rather than kind of starting out individually, that's always helpful to just get groups to think together about what they need. I think that will also help us protect against some of the AI slop that we will inevitably see as people get eager about contributing, but making sure that that group of people can maintain what is it that is beneficial about this piece of software or this open standard. So get some numbers together, get a group together as you start to form.
Kristen, you had your hand up as well. Oh,
yeah. I think it's very much about the value proposition, right? So what is it that you're offering? And just as Marcel said, like 10 years ago, everybody wanted to be a SaaS company. Now with AI, everybody wants to be a service company, right? Because everybody can produce code at actually zero cost. So now is actually a great time to say, okay, I want to build something. The code should be open because I want to share that knowledge. And I want to focus on the value proposition. What am I offering to the client? And then the question whether that should be an open source model or closed source model, that has gotten so much easier because code is actually something that you don't want to close. You want to keep it open. You want to allow people to improve it, replicate it. So the question is not about the model under which you want to license your code. Openness, I think, is now more dominant or the clear path forward than ever. What you need to focus on is the value proposition. What are you adding? What value are you adding for the client? And the code is just a tool, and its importance has become less, I think. Yeah.
Inga, I saw you again. Had a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to say what Kristen said, but I want to add, don't be scared, because you can be scared and think, oh, I'm creating this and then I will give it away to everybody. It's really the services around it. And so you don't be scared and think really open. That are the two things that can help.
Great. Well, with 5 CEOs on the screen, I'm sure this is cumulatively costing tens of thousands of dollars per of time here with taking all your time. So I'm very sensitive to the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for participating. And just from, again, not just Apereos, but someone who's involved in open source for 30 years. I hate to say that, talking about how old my hairline, or no hairline, highlights it. It's very important to engage with companies that are authentically working with open source. It just can't survive, and we've seen through the adoption. So I very much appreciate all the work that you all are doing in not only the hands-on work around open source, but helping to raise awareness. And I think the comment you're making about the investment is more than just technology. It's more than just dollars. You have to fully engage with the communities is a great one to take away from this. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. Thank you for your support of Apereo in so many different ways. Thank you for your support of our projects in so many different ways, and our community. And thanks to everyone who came today. I hope I know there are several great nuggets here to take away from, but I will I will be happy to forward any messages. I didn't want to put all these folks' emails up because they would get bombarded, I assume, with questions directly from folks. But I would be happy to serve as a pass on the emails of anything anyone has questions or something to folks if you'd like. But I hope you'll all join me in thanking everyone who participated today. And I think my last slide, if you want to come to another micro conference, on every Apereo webpage, there's a link there if you can get the communications so you can see the next ones. But once again, thanks everyone.